it's that time again. We are here. It is lunch and learn time at Church Butler headquarters in the U.S. of A. Today we're going intergalactic, maybe not intergalactic. We're going international to our northern neighbors in Canada to pick
Canada, eh?
Joanna la Fleur is here, and it sounds international too. I love your name. Is that how you say it? First of all,
Yeah, it's the flower in French, la fleur.
La Fleur. Welcome to the show. We've got this little bit of podcast that's trying to be practical, tactical. It's a lunch and learn format, and we bring in gurus, the best of the best, to share some wisdom with us church practitioners across the country. So, Joanna, I just want to introduce you to the crowd here for those of you that might not have been paying attention to this woman who has been on the rise and publishing and speaking. Joanna, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background? First of all, where are you located exactly? What church are you working with? And some other stuff, any good stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, I live in Toronto, right in the heart of the city of Toronto. It's the largest city in Canada. I work at a suburban church, though, so I do the commute out to the suburbs, multi-site church, 4 sites in the suburbs. And we're a church of about 4,000 people at this point. I started there 9 years ago when we had about 700 people. So we've grown, and I've learned a ton. Church communications, marketing, business, media. On the side, I do podcasting. I'm on a women's TV show here in Canada. It's like, think about like The View.
Yes.
Only it's Christian women. So,
it really
I
is.
sit on the couch.
An episode or two. And it really now,
yeah, we have fun.
Church of 4,000. You must have a staff of 50 people, right? So how many people in your church come?
How many staff?
How many communicators, staff-wise, are on your team? For a mega church of that size, everyone thinks that you have this whole media production department. How many people are in the communications department?
We have 2, but we hire contractors for a ton of stuff. So our graphic design, video, it's website, like that stuff, we contract it out to people who are experts, and we only pay them for the time they have. We don't pay, we don't have to pay for their computer or their desk or their lunch break. We just pay for their hourly or their project rate.
Yeah, and I think more and more churches are going that route,
yeah.
Not just for cost containment, but flexibility and also a better breadth of talent that you can bring into the mix over the year.
Well, and even just simply like if you're doing graphic design, each designer has their taste and their art style. And so each project we work on, we might want a bit of a different taste. There's still the brand that we're sticking to, but if we wanted to do something amazing with lettering, beautiful artistic lettering, well, then we'd go and hire someone who does that specifically. But if you have someone full-time on staff, it might be harder for them to pivot to different creative styles.
Yes, definitely. And tell us, like, if someone actually hasn't been following you, what are, say, the top, I don't know, keyword phrases or the categories of interest that you have in this space?
Categories of interest? You mean like what are
what do you want to be known for? What are you trying to drill down? Everyone has their niche, and everyone has that space they're trying to carve out.
Yeah, I always say that I think the church is the most important message in the world, so we should be the best communicators in the world, but we aren't. And so my passion is trying to help churches and Christian ministries become better at communicating. A lot of that comes through digital technology. How do we do evangelism and discipleship in a digital age? That was the focus of my master's thesis when I went to seminary a couple of years back. And trying to figure out in the digital world, how do we communicate and how do we reach people and grow people for Christ?
Awesome. Now, there's one piece that struck my eye when I was on your site, and that was an article that you wrote that said the one video you should make this year. And I thought maybe today for the Lunch and Learn, we would just camp out on this one little concept or idea and discuss it for a little bit. So what is that one video? I'm trying to think, if I had one video that I could make for a church and that's it, just one shot, what would I prioritize up front? And for me, my gut feeling before reading the article was the challenge, right? I was asking myself the question before reading the article. Challenge was for me, I said, I think it's probably like an inspirational vision video.
Yeah.
But yet, that's the wrong answer. So tell us about what you think the one video you should be making this year as a church.
Tim, I'll tell you the answer and then I'll tell you why. The one video I think you should make this year is a testimony video, a story of something that God has done uniquely in your church community this year. The reason why is because you're the only church in the whole wide world that can tell that story. And I think it's our responsibility to steward the stories of the work of God amongst us. I also think they're really cheap. They're one of the simplest things you can do. And if you can't afford video, you can just record it as a podcast episode. You can record the audio of someone telling their story and interviewing them. News videos are things that people ask me about all the time. How do you do your news videos weekly? I think they're great if you have the capacity and the money for it, but they expire after a week or two.
Yeah.
So you spend a ton of money. They're disposable.
Yeah.
And other than in the services, a lot of people don't ever watch them. I think inspiring videos, I think of like an Easter video of the cross and some creative project, or Christmas, or a major vision Sunday. Or like a series you're doing on Ephesians. Well, the good news is lots of churches who have lots more money than we do have already made that video, and we can go buy it on the internet for $20 maybe. And so we don't need, if we don't have a lot of money in our video budget, there are churches who have already done that work for us, and we can find a video on Ephesians.
I'm going to do time out right there, because there's two things that just bring to my mind. One is, if I see some other churches that have done a great inspirational video or have done some pieces, I can't just copy it. How do I go about figuring out how to get it or use it? What actually happens? I don't think anyone ever talks about that.
Well, that's a good question. First of all, at our church, we have enough budget that we make these inspirational videos. And if churches come to us and want to use them, first of all, you should ask before you use another church's video. Don't steal it.
Right.
You should ask. And whenever they ask, we're so happy for them to use it. But one of the things that people don't think about if they're not familiar with video is that we have paid to license some things for that video, particularly usually the music. And so if people, quote unquote, steal the video off of YouTube and just rip it, they're actually not paying properly for the rights to use it. Not just to the church, but to the artist who made the song in the soundtrack behind the video. And so we put up some of our videos that people ask regularly to use on a site where, again, people pay $20. And then it's properly licensed, so nobody's stealing. Everybody can afford a $20 video, because we're not trying to make money, quote unquote. We're just trying to do it legally. And there's a few different websites that sell Christian videos. If you Google Christian videos, people will find them.
Have you got, so I think I came from Liquid Church where it was a very creative ministry. Video was something that was a gift of the team. We've got inquiries all the time, almost on a weekly basis, that got routed to some of the church comm people, their media team. We never said, I don't think there was a single time we ever said no. And that we actually would hand over even some of the raw footage so that they can get rid of our branding and put in their own. And I think our media team went to lengths to help other churches to repurpose content that we created. Have you guys ever said no? Have you ever come across, if someone asks politely and say, we love the stuff you did, we want to try to figure out how to use it on, have you come across that in your church?
Yeah, I don't remember ever saying no.
Right?
I don't think I've ever said no. We want to help. That's what
I don't understand why people don't ask more, right? I think so. That's one of the things I just want to dispel, is that churches are generous. Us Christians are nice people.
We're nice guys. We're not competing with one another.
Yeah. And
now
so
that said, if you were the church down the street and you wanted to use it the same week, maybe we'd say, hey, could you use it for Easter next year instead of this year? That would be maybe as far as I would go. But yeah, we want to share.
Yeah, I think we've always tried to figure out how we can get it to work, not the other way around. So the default posture is generosity.
Yeah.
not protection.
Yeah.
And I've yet to find another church that is like that is creating content. And so I just want to put that out there, because I think small churches just feel like these big productions, they're protective. They would say no. I would say even the biggest mega churches, Life Church puts out all their stuff for free. I know Saddleback and North Point, same thing. And so if the big guys are doing it, the medium guys are doing it, that's the first thing. And then the second one is, you're talking about these websites. Just to be very practical, can you name a couple of websites so that people can start these resources?
worshiphousemedia.com and sermonspice.com. Now, a bunch of the stuff on there is cheesy, but you can decide if it works with your culture and your people. There's some really great stuff on there.
Yeah. So those are two great, and there's plenty of other sites out there, but those are two great places to start, and they're affordable. I think I've grabbed clips as low as, I think, $2.95, cheaper than the Starbucks.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so yes, paid and free. I think there's great ways to do that. So that solves some of the inspirational stuff. But what about the vision video? Like, what about the introduction to the pastor video? You really think the testimonial video is more important or has more value than sharing who's going to be preaching on Sunday, or sharing that bio, or sharing that introduction of the senior pastor?
Yeah, I guess I'm just talking in a scarcity model, when you have to choose.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be great if you can do it, please do it. It'll be awesome. It'll be effective. But there's a bunch of other ways you can communicate vision. I mean, frankly, you communicate vision before people even enter the building. You're communicating vision from the parking lot, right? And so there's lots of ways to communicate vision. You can do that in books. You could even do, if you had to do it by video and you're trying to pitch, maybe you're trying to raise a bunch of money or something. Maybe you'd want to do like a Facebook Live with the senior leader and someone moderating with them, and then having people who are asking, hey, why do you want that $3 million for the building? Okay, well, let's talk about it. We've presented it in the sermon, maybe on a Sunday morning, and now we're going on a Facebook Live on Monday night. You can ask any questions you want, and we'll answer them live right in front of you over video from the comfort of your home. From your living room, you can ask these things.
Okay.
It's just another example. I think there's lots of ways you can talk about vision that doesn't have to be a video. Now,
testimonials. Is there any critical part of a testimonial? Do you just, and like you said, that it doesn't need to be high production. You could use what's in our pocket, right? I think this is, I'm vlogging daily with my iPhone.
Yeah.
Even though I have other equipment. And the results have been still phenomenal. I think, again, you're right. Testimonial video, you can produce it low end with what you have. What about the content? Is there any sort of framework, or is there just one killer question that you have to ask, or what are you trying to demonstrate in a good testimonial video?
Yeah, I think in short, you want it to be more about what God has done than about a person particularly. We're trying to celebrate the work of God, not the life of that person. I don't know. Maybe if God has made them successful in business, it's not an ad for their business. I don't know, whatever that is. But yeah, we're trying to celebrate who God is. And so the most simple structure of any testimony is like the before. What was it like before? What happened when God intervened in my life or in that moment or that struggle? And now what is it like on the other side? What's my perspective now? Or who is God to me as a bigger, it doesn't have to be literally a moment of salvation. It might be a moment of, I was really sick and I was struggling, or I didn't know what to do with my future. Or it can be some of those stories we can tell, I hope, would be very normal stories. I think if we only tell the sensational ones of, I came from a life of drugs and prostitution. And I mean, those stories are amazing too, but if those are the only kinds of stories we tell, it can make it feel like those are the only ones we need to tell. But actually, like the stories of normal faithfulness in everyday life and God showing up, to a mom at home with her kids, or to a guy who's struggling at his job, or to a teenager who's trying to figure out what to do to go to college. These are real stories that we can tell, and they're everywhere around us, but only our church can tell the story. So let's let's get on telling them.
And then, are you a fan of those types of testimonial videos that are like an interview conversation, or something that's like scripted and talking head video, like a TV ad?
I think the less scripted, the more natural it is, the better. I think most people are not very good with like a teleprompter, and like I use a teleprompter all the time in my work, so I'm quite comfortable with it. I hope I can sound fairly natural, but a lot of people they can't. So if you can be off camera or on camera, sort of prodding them with a few questions they prepared in advance, but you're not trying to surprise them, but maybe you can record their natural response rather than a canned response. You'll probably get it better because they're not professional actors and they're going to be nervous on camera.
And length, how long, in this day and age where we're trying to get shorter and shorter and shorter, how long should a testimonial video be these days?
Yeah, I guess it depends where you want to use it. I think if it's in a service, maybe as part of an illustration of what the pastor is teaching about, maybe you can have up to 3, 4, 5 minutes. If it's something for online, I would say something that's as short as you can, that just to hit the impact. Most people's stories probably don't need to be told in 30 minutes. Like they're probably not that interesting.
That's really good to remember and think about. And then the last one is there a specific, I guess, when you roll it out, is there a specific way you're supposed to introduce it? How do you present it? Is it just something that, if it's a video during service, lights out, and you just play it, or do you actually have an introduction? Do you have the person there? A lot of people feel awkward about presenting this type of content at church. And so what's the best place, or how do they segue into it?
Yeah, well, I think the place that it probably will have the most impact is if it connects in some way to the topic of the sermon or the series, if you're in a series style preaching. Yeah. So the pastor's preaching said, we're in this passage. I said Ephesians earlier. So we're in this passage in Ephesians. And here is a story of someone who's going through the same thing we're talking about in this passage. They've queued it up verbally and it goes over to the video. That's the best way in my mind to do it in a service. If they're online, maybe you film like 5 of them and you find a hashtag like stories from Trinity Church or whatever your church is called. And you can release them online, every, once a week or every day for a whole week or whatever it is, once a month. And then if you have a hashtag, of course, then people can go back and find the other ones you've already posted.
I love it. Love it. Well, thank you for those great tips. You have a podcast of your own that everyone here must pull out their podcast player and subscribe right now. So what is it? What's the name of your podcast that we can all look up and subscribe?
My own podcast is a long-form interview podcast called Word Made Digital. It's for creatives and communicators. Second podcast I have with my friend James Adams from Visual Media Church, daily podcast, 5 or 10 minutes, short, practical stuff, just like we've just done here. And you'll find that at The Future Church.
The Future Church podcast. I love it. Everybody, interrupt what you're doing, press pause, go search, and hit subscribe. The long form, I think, is great. It's a great model for interviewing people. And I love the short form. Someone just came across it, a friend, and he asked me if I knew about it. I happen to. And they said, this is so interesting because it answers a specific question. It has the banter between 2 people, and it just gives me just a lot of energy around that one question to brainstorm and start thinking about how to contextualize it for my own ministry. So definitely those 2. Now, if someone was watching or listening in today, Joanna, what's the best way for someone to actually get in touch with you directly?
You're gonna find me on Instagram. It's the most fun way to talk, right? That's how we met, even, Kenny.
Yes.
So at Joanna la Fleur, you can find me there. You'll find links there to my website and all that kind of stuff. But you can send me a direct message.
Awesome. Joanna la Fleur on Instagram. And thank you again for spending some time with us today. Promise me that you'll be back on the show later this year.
Sounds great.
Everybody else, thank you so much for being with us today. We want you to keep on commenting, keep on DMing us. What do you want to hear about? What do you want to learn about in our Lunch and Learn series? We want to make this the most practical podcast for you in church communications. I'm Kenny Jahng. I'll check you out here next time on the Church Butler Lunch and Learn. In the meantime, go to our website, www.butler.church. Remember, be a blessing, and we'll check you out here next time on the Lunch and Learn.